All right, so now let's go ahead and take a look at lesson 7.5. In this case, it talks about angle relationships in parallel lines. So in this case, just a few of the vocab terms here. We have supplementary angles, complementary angles, alternate interior or exterior angles, vertical angles, and corresponding angles here. Now, whenever we're talking about supplementary angles, we're actually talking about angles that either equal 180 or sum up to 180 degrees. In this case, for example, in this lesson, it's going to be a sum of angles that give us 180. So, for example, 180 in this case, if we're looking here, 180 is actually a line. If you're able to form a line with an angle, that gives you 180 degrees. So in this case, for today's lesson, we're actually looking at two angles in this case. We have two separate angles that when we combine them, they're actually going to give us 180 degrees. In this case, complementary talks about a 90-degree angle. So in this case, 180, if we have 180, half of 180 is 90. So in 180, there's actually two complementary angles because they're both right. So let's go ahead and take a look at the other definitions here. So go ahead and sketch this out. In this case, we have two parallel lines, A and B, that are cut by a transversal, which is line out. Now, we do have a total of 8 different angles here. We have 8 different angles, and we want to go ahead and label them here. So starting off in this case, guys, I want to go ahead and first focus on our supplementary angles. So I'm going to go ahead and write them down. Let's go ahead and talk about supplementary. So I'm going to go ahead and do it up here. Supplementary. Let's do it small. So supplementary in this case, guys, we talked about has to add up to 180 degrees. Now, in this case, guys, if you take a look at here, for example, I'm actually going to say that angle 1 and angle 2 are supplementary angles. Because if I were to draw, in this case, a line with angle 1 and 2 here, it would actually form a line and give us 180 degrees. So angle 1 plus angle 2 is going to equal 180. In this case, we actually have multiple. So after that one, I could actually say that we also have, I don't know, maybe angle 7 and 8 are also 1. So let's go ahead and say angle 7 plus angle 8 are 180. We could also say in this case, guys, that angle 2 and 4 is also 1. So if we do angle 2 and 4 here, once again, they form a line and they add up to 180. So angle 2 plus angle 4 is also going to be 180. And like I said, guys, there's actually multiple here. We also have we also have, in this case, angle 1 and 3. We also have 3 and 4. We have 5 and 6, 5 and 7, 6 and 8, and obviously 7 and 8 there. So there are a couple in this case. So if you're able to form a line with an angle, then that would be 180 degrees. So those are supplementary. Now let's go ahead and go now with alternate interior. So let's go ahead and go with alternate. That's just abbreviation. Exterior. Let's go with exterior. Now, alternate exterior angles in this case, guys, are angles that are found on the outside. Angles that are found on the outside and are opposites of each other. So, for example, if I want to go ahead and find an alternate interior angle to angle 1 here, it would actually be 8. So, when they're alternate interior in this case, guys, they're actually congruent. So, I can say that angle 1 is congruent to angle 8 because they're alternate interior angles. And I could actually say the same thing about angle 2 and angle 7 because both of them, once again, they're on the outside and they're on alternating sides. So angle 2 and angle 7 are congruent. All right, so that's alternate exterior. Now, let's go ahead and go on to corresponding angles here. So corresponding angles. I'm going to go ahead and write it on this side. Corresponding. Now, corresponding angles in this case, guys, are actually angles that are going to be on the same side, but one angle is on the inside and one angle is on the outside. So, for example, let's say I want to go ahead and start off with angle 1 here. Angle 1, let's do that in black. Angle 1. An angle in this case that is found now on the inside on the same side would actually be angle 5. So, angle 1 is congruent to angle 5 because they are corresponding. I could actually say the same thing about angle 3 and angle 7. And I could also say the same thing on the ones on the other side. So let me go ahead and actually do one on the other side, which in this case, let's say I want to go ahead and do 4. The corresponding angle to 4 would be 8. So let's say angle 4 is congruent to angle 8. I'm not going to be writing all of them down, but you get the idea in this case of which ones would be corresponding, because we could also say 2 and 6 are corresponding, or 3 and 7 are also corresponding to each other. Now, in this case, guys, once again, they're all going to be congruent here. So that's corresponding. Now, let's go ahead and talk about vertical angles. Vertical angles. In this case, guys, vertical angles are actually angles that are going to be more or less attached, but they're going to be right across from each other. Not adjacent to it, like on the sides, but across from it, okay? So, in this case, for example, starting off with 1, angle vertical to 1 is actually going to be 4. So, both of those angles are congruent because they are vertical angles. Congruent because they're vertical here. Now, I could say the same thing in this case, guys, from 7 and 6. So, I could say that angle 7 is congruent to angle 6. All right? And we could say the same thing about 2 and 3 and 5 and 8. 5 and 8 there. All right? I'm not going to be writing all of them. Now, next one in this case, guys, and I believe this is actually the last one. Let me just double check. We're going to go ahead and talk about the alternate interior. Now, alternate interior actually does the same thing as the alternate exterior, just that this one focuses on angles that are on the outside, on the inside, alternate interior. Now, the interior in this case, guys, is these angles here, the ones that are inside. So, alternating means that they're going to be on opposite sides. So, in this case, for example, I could say that 3 and 6 are alternate interior angles, therefore they're congruent. So angle 3 is congruent to angle 6 because they're alternate interior. And we'll go ahead and say the same thing about 4 and 5. So angle 4 is congruent to angle 5. Okay. Now, one thing else I did not mention in this case, guys, is we did talk about supplementary angles, in this case being forming a line in this case. But knowing all of these definitions now, in this case, I could actually say that I have even more complement or supplementary angles. Now, what I mean by that is I could actually say that angle 4 and angle 6 are actually both supplementary. So both of these here are, I could say that they're supplementary. And because in this case, I could say that 4 and 5 are, in this case, alternate interior, which makes 4 and 5 equal to each other. So 5 in this case is right next to 6, which means we could form a 180. So in this case, guys, angles that are going to be on the same side inside would be supplementary angles. Same side inside. Okay. So that's 4 and that's 6. So let's go ahead and get started in this case, guys, with our first example here. And this is example 1. And in this case, we want to go ahead and solve for each variable. They're telling us that line M and line L are parallel to each other. So in this case, it says we have angle W, we have 107, we have Z, X, and Y. Now, in this case, guys, we want to go ahead and identify first which angles are going to be congruent to each other and which angles in this case are not, right? So let's go ahead and get started here. So in this case, we can say we're given in this case, guys, angle 107. Now, what can I say in this case about angle 107 and W? Actually, angle 107 and W are actually vertical angles. So I could say that angle W is equal to 107 because they are vertical angles to 107. They're vertical angles, or it's a vertical angle to 107. Now, knowing that in this case, I could also say that W here, or that 107, is actually a corresponding angle to Y. So that makes Y, in this case, angle Y, equal to 107 because they are, in this case, corresponding angles, corresponding. And in this case, we could also say that 107 is congruent to Z because they're alternate interior. So angle Z is equal to 107 because they are alternate interior. All right, now that just leaves us in this case with X. Now, in this case, guys, we said that angles that are on the same side inside are going to be supplementary. So if I want to solve for X in this case, I actually need to subtract, or let's go ahead and make an equation here. I have 107 plus X in this case is going to equal 180 degrees. Now, if I want to solve for X, I'll go ahead and subtract 107 minus 107, and that is going to give us 73. So our answer in this case for X would be 73, and that would be for W, Y, and Z. All right, here is the next one, guys. Here's the next one. Now, in this case, this is similar to it, but now we're just given only two angles, and we're actually given expressions for each of them. So in this case, we have line M and line N, and we're given angles A and B, and they want us to find the X value and our angle B. Now, in this case, guys, we want to go ahead and take a look. In this case, we have angle A inside, and angle B is also on the inside. Now, the only two things that talk about the inside is they could either be alternate interior or they could be supplementary. Now, because these are actually on opposite sides, these two angles are actually alternate interior. So these two angles here are alternate interior. And if we take a look back at what alternate interior means, our angles in this case are going to be congruent. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and make angle A and angle B equal to each other. So we have an 8x plus 78 equals a 2x plus 114. Now, once again, we're solving for X here, guys. So let's go ahead and move everything to one side. So I'm going to go ahead and subtract 78 to both sides. That gives us an 8x equal to a 2x plus, how much is that going to be? 80, 90. Let's go ahead and take out the calculator. That's a 114 minus 78, which should give us 36. All right. Calculators do come in handy here. So from there, let's go ahead and move the X to the other side. And that is going to give us a 6x equals 36. Once again, we want to go ahead and solve for X here. So X in this case is going to equal a 6. Now, that's one of the answers we're looking for. Now, we need to find angle B. Angle B in this case, guys, equals a 2x plus 114. So angle B here equals a 2x plus 14. X in this case is 6. So then angle B equals 2 times 6, which is 12. And then 12 plus 114 is going to give us 126. So those are our two answers. Once again, we made these equal to each other because these angles here were alternate interior. They were alternate interior. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at this next one, and this is actually our last one. And in this case, we have, once again, lines A and B, and they're parallel to each other. They're cut by a transversal in this case, and they're giving us angles C and D. Now it says find X and find angle C and D. Now let's go ahead and take a look at where these angles are located. Once again, these angles are both on the inside. Now, these angles are actually not on the opposite side. They're on the same side, which means if they're on the same side, they're actually supplementary angles. Supplementary. Or I could also say that angle C is here, and if I form there, that's going to be 180. So it could also be 180 looking at it that way. So in this case, since they're supplementary, it means that we have to do angle C plus angle D will add up to 180 degrees. So we do have to add both of our angles there. So let's go ahead and do that here. So I have a 9x plus 88 plus a 6x plus 182 equals 180 degrees. So from there, guys, let's go ahead and combine like terms. So I'm going to go ahead and combine the 9x and the 6x, which is going to give us a 15x. And then we're going to go ahead and combine the 88 and the 182. And that is going to give us, is it 270 plus 270? Let's just double check, because I don't want to be wrong and then have to start over here. 88 plus 182, which is 270. And all of this is equal to 180 degrees. Now, once again, we're solving for x here. So I'm going to go ahead and subtract 270 to both sides. That gives us a 15x equal to, in this case, that's going to be 90. Just double checking here. 180 minus 270 is 90. Now, from there, we're going to go ahead and divide that by a 15. 15. So divide this by 15 and 15. So x in this case equals a negative 6. All right, that's one of our answers. Now, we already found what x equals. So now we need to find, in this case, angle C and angle D. So in this case, angle C here equals 9x, or in this case, 9 times negative 6 plus 88. Now, in this case, guys, 9 times 6 is negative 54 plus 88. If we combine those two, we should get a positive 34. Let me just double check once again, guys, because we can never be too sure. 88. All right, now let's go ahead and move on to angle D. And angle D in this case is going to be 6 times a negative 6 plus 182. So that's going to give us negative 36 plus 182. And our answer in this case should be 146. And let's just double check that, because like I said, we can't be too sure. And that is 146. Another way we could have also done this is that since angle C and D are supplementary, I could have actually just done 180 minus 34. And that would have given us also the 146. Okay, so that would be our work.